Looking to free hit this week, or maybe you just want to make the best free transfers possible? Well, stick with me. I've got a video going through players to buy and avoid for game week 34. A bit of a different vibe for this video today. I'm on holiday in Barcelona at the moment, so I'm not wearing my glasses because I've had sunglasses on all day and I'm just about to go out for dinner, but I couldn't resist making a video. So without further ado, before we actually get into players that I want to buy and avoid for this game week, it's really important to be sure of what the fixtures are coming up. Ultimately, the decisions you make in terms of players to buy and avoid should be made based upon their fixtures. And with 34 brings with it a really good double game week for Brighton, Liverpool, Man City and Man United. I sort of discount Fulham and West Ham. I mean, Fulham have got Man City and Liverpool in a double game week. That hardly even counts. And then West Ham, Crystal Palace, good fixture. Man City, it's basically a single for them. So yeah, without giving away too much, you can probably imagine the teams that we're focused on. But looking a bit further forward than 34 as well, especially when using your free transfers, because you don't really want to use a free transfer on just 1 week. So obviously Brighton have a couple more double game weeks. Man City, Man United and Newcastle also with double game weeks later on in the season. It makes sense to be targeting players from those teams. So without further ado, let's get on to the players themselves. So first up, it's my absolute top target for game week 34, and it's Mo Salah. He was the top player for expected points, but I think things are moving around a little bit between him and Erling Haaland. I know quite a few people are actually going to captain Salah over Haaland, but I think regardless, I'd just be worried not to have him in my team. And to be honest, I'd almost be making this decision out of fear beyond anything else. For me, out of that Liverpool front three, there's lots of rotation going on that Klopp's doing at the moment. Nunes, Jota, Firmino, Diaz, even Carvalho could come into the fray as well. So for me, Salah is the number one player in that Liverpool front line, and you've got to think he's going to play almost 90 minutes of every game. And looking beyond 34 as well, it's a great run of fixtures for him, and the double in 34 itself, Tottenham and Fulham at home. I mean, Tottenham, after the Newcastle performance, you'd imagine they'll kick on a little bit, but I don't see them beating Liverpool at Anfield at the moment. And I know Liverpool have not been as good as they have been in previous seasons, but I don't feel like Salah's level has actually dropped at all. I mean, looking at his underlying numbers this season, 0.77 expected returns per 90 is pretty much, it's a little bit drop off from other seasons, but it's pretty much the level he's been performing in the previous seasons. And yeah, just looking at the overall Premier League players, he's within the top 3 or 4 for expected returns per 90. So for that reason, with Tottenham and Fulham at home, in game week 34, for me, it makes complete sense to make him your number one transfer target. Next up, it's just a feature on Brighton, essentially. I feel like going into game week 34, if you're not already tripled up on Brighton, you really should be. I'd be terrified, to be honest, if I wasn't. I think they've got 3 upcoming double game weeks, but I don't think they definitely do have 3 double game weeks, 34, 36 and 37. They've got the most fixtures of any team up until the end of the season. And just looking at their stats as well, they create literally the most chances of any team in Europe. They've done that since the World Cup. So yeah, they're just a fantastic team at the moment, in great form. And I think you could take your pick of these lot really below me. Probably Ferguson, maybe one to watch out for because he seems to have a bit of an injury. Steele, there's a bit of rotation behind him as well with Sanchez. Maybe he's first choice for the Premier League, but I think it remains to be seen who actually starts in 33 for them. But regardless, my 3 of choice are Estupiñán, March and Mitoma. I think March and Mitoma are by far the best Brighton attackers. Obviously, McAllister's in with a shout with his free kicks and penalties, but I just think he's always at risk of playing in that defensive midfield role, which obviously reduces his attacking output a lot. But Mitoma and March have been given a lot of responsibility going forward by De Zerbi. And yeah, I think they're great options. And Estupiñán, I think they're pretty good defensively as well. And for me, Estupiñán's the strongest defender. Dunk is definitely an honourable mention. The plus point with Dunk is that he's absolutely nailed in that team. Literally one of the most nailed players in the Premier League. Whereas obviously Estupiñán, playing left back, runs a lot every game. It could get rested here and there. But for me, I think Estupiñán is the strongest defender. So my 3 of choice, Estupiñán, March and Mitoma. Now this next player's certainly not my top target to bring in this week. He's not got a double game week and he's not top by any means for expected points. But I think Isak for Newcastle is a great enabler to allow you to go from, maybe you hold Harry Kane and you can do a 2 transfer move to get rid of a midfielder and Harry Kane for Salah and Isak. I like Isak because he's obviously got a double game week coming up. And yeah, it just seems to be really good for Newcastle. And 6.7 million is an absolute steal for the upside that he provides. You know, he's on penalties, seems to be starting every game for Newcastle. And, you know, Wilson seems to be second choice at the moment. And when Wilson does play, Isak doesn't tend to lose his place. And looking at his underlying numbers, 0.75 expected returns per 90. We've just gone through Mo Salah all the way up there at 12 million. This guy has very similar numbers to Mo Salah, and he's only 6.7 million. And just looking at the run of fixtures he's got, I think they're absolutely fantastic. I mean, most of those games, Arsenal at home is a tricky fixture, don't get me wrong, but they're not too strong defensively. So you could quite easily see Isak scoring in all of these games. Yeah, I just think he's a great option. Again, not necessarily targeting him for game week 34 because he doesn't have a double, but overall, like, to get Salah in, which I think is the priority transfer this week, and you're probably going to need to make 2 moves to do that, I think Isak is your perfect enabler to allow you to do it. Now, next up is Marcus Rashford. Now, I wouldn't feel any shame if I sold him already when he got injured in bringing him back into my team. I think he's absolutely unbelievable value at 7.1 million. He's essential to that Man United team, which makes me think Erik ten Hag is going to start him in pretty much every game that he's fit for. Just generally as well, he's Man United's best asset. And with 2 double game weeks coming up, it makes sense to have him in your team. And yeah, 7.1 million he's probably the best value mid in the game overall. And I know the bottom right stats are not quite as good as the likes of Salah and Isak, but genuinely Rashford has really kicked on since the World Cup. I think we all know that. So this is across the whole season. So his stats post the World Cup are amongst the best in the Premier League. So I wouldn't let 0.55 expected returns per 90 put me off. I think he's a great option. And if you don't have him already, you really need to think about getting him into your team. Now, this is quite a similar video, actually, just looking at the players I'm recommending to the one I made last week. But ultimately, you know, these are just the players you got to target in FPL at the moment because 34 onwards, they just look like great options. And it doesn't matter if I said it last week, I still think they're great options now. So I'm going to repeat it. I think Trent and Robertson for Liverpool are really important players, in my opinion, to try and get into your team. Ultimately, the Liverpool attackers, as I said when going through Salah, they're not necessarily all nailed. So you can't back 3 of them to play like every game, which makes me more inclined to go for Trent and Robertson because maybe Trent in particular, because he doesn't have any competition really for his position. So you got to think he's playing every game that he's fit for. Robertson obviously has Tsimikas waiting in the wings and maybe not quite as good going forward. Obviously, Trent now playing this new inverted role as well, and the prices reflect that. I think Trent is my number 1, followed by Robertson. And then just looking at the clean sheet odds, you can see it just above their heads there. They've got some fantastic clean sheet odds for the rest of the season, according to DraftHound. And for that reason, I just think they're both great options. And if you bring them into your team, you're not going to be too concerned about rotation, particularly with Trent. And for that reason, I think I'd probably prefer them to the likes of Jota, Firmino, although Firmino's a bit dabbling with injury, isn't he? Or Nunes or someone like that. I just prefer Trent and Robertson because you can be pretty sure they start every game. And they're still really good going forward and obviously can score points for clean sheets too. Now, this next player, I'll admit, is a little bit contradictory to the free hit video I made yesterday. But if you're spending your free transfers on Ederson, I think it's a different story than if you're on your free hit. If you're on your free hit for 34, I think you can afford to take a 1-week punt that he's going to get 1 or 2 clean sheets. But if you're using a free transfer to bring Ederson into your team, I'd question that decision. I don't know if he's going to keep a clean sheet against Arsenal with 33. I'm recording this on Wednesday evening before the game kicks off, so these stats might change a little bit. But ultimately, this is across the whole season, so I don't think, even if he manages to keep one against Arsenal, I don't think this will change too much. 1.3 saves per 90 means he rarely gets saves bonus. At this point, he's played 30 games and kept 10 clean sheets. So realistically, he only returns through keeping clean sheets. And maybe, you know, if the opposition misses a penalty or he saves one. But I think ultimately, you know, that counts for every goalkeeper. I just think, you know, he's returned in 1 out of every 3 games. And for 5.4 million on a goalkeeper, I just don't think that's good value or worth it. I think, as my old adage in FPL at least, is to go for the lower than 5 million goalkeepers that consistently make saves, because that's where the points come. You know, Raya has absolutely shot himself up the leaderboard in terms of top scoring goalkeepers this season. And it's not necessarily because he's kept clean sheets. Ultimately, he has kept some clean sheets, but he's been making saves bonus every game. And that's what propels the goalkeepers to score the top points. So yeah, I just urge on the side of caution with Ederson, really. I think if you're on a free hit, he's fine. And ultimately, you probably want him, actually, because, you know, you probably back Man City defensively in 34, and there aren't many defenders you can say are nailed. But if you're using your free transfer, I don't think I'd be doing it on Ederson. And then to extend the point, I'm dissing Man City quite a lot here, but ultimately, I also don't think the Man City defence are worth it on a free transfer. Again, free hitting might be a slightly different story, but ultimately, like, you can't back any one of those guys to play all the games. Like John Stones, he's not necessarily risked in every game, although it doesn't actually appear in this graphic. But he's obviously playing this new centre defensive sort of midfield role as well. But we just know he's quite injury prone, so I don't think Pep is going to risk playing him 90 minutes and starting him every game. Ruben Diaz seems to be a bit favoured. Obviously, Ake with his hamstring injury. Laporte might play left back, and obviously they got Sergio Gomez too. Walker's an option. Lewis is an option. Akanji can play. There's just so much rotation, and I don't think you can trust any one of them to start. And even, you know, Pep, I remember once saying Ake was essential, and they proceeded to bench him in the next game. So you can't trust what he says. And for me, FPL is all about having fun, and I just don't have fun when I've got Man City defenders in my team. I'm worried they're not going to play, and you're banking on clean sheets, which, as we saw with Edison, they've only kept 10 out of 30 games so far, albeit Arsenal still to play. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm just not overly convinced on the Man City defence. So again, another avoid for me. And that's the end of the video. If you found it useful, please leave me a like rating. And if you're new around here, subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. I'll be back with another video before the Game Week 34 deadline. I'll see you in the next one.